The man who designed America's public school system did not send his own children to one. John D. Rockefeller was about to fund the construction of 912 public high schools across 11 American states. In 1917, when his grandchildren reached school age, he did not enroll them in the public schools his money had funded. He built them their own school, a private school in Manhattan called the Lincoln School. Small classes, real teachers, children allowed to think. The General Education Board was founded in 1902. Chartered by the United States Congress on January 12, 1903. Over 60 years, it would distribute $325 million into American education, adjusted for today, roughly $28 billion. Between 1896 and 1920, the Rockefeller and Carnegie Foundations together spent more money building the American compulsory school system than the United States federal government did. Read that again. Two private foundations, funded by an oil monopoly and a steel monopoly, outspent the United States government on the education of its own children for 24 straight years. That is not philanthropy. That is engineering. And the teachers knew. The resolution reads, in part, "We view with alarm the activity of the Carnegie and Rockefeller Foundations, agencies not in any way responsible to the people, in their efforts to control the policies of our state educational institutions." That is teachers. 110 years ago. And nobody listened. 2 years later, it got worse. In 1917, Senator Chamberlain of Oregon rose in the United States Senate and warned the country directly. In 2 generations, they can change the minds of the people to make them conform to the cult of Rockefeller or the cult of Carnegie, rather than the fundamental principles of American democracy. A sitting senator saying out loud that 2 generations was all the system needed. That was 1917. Count the generations since. A teachers' union, a senator, a congressional committee. This is not an accident. This was the design. Your grandson's school was not designed in America. It was designed 200 years ago in a foreign empire to solve a problem that had nothing to do with American children. The country was Prussia. After Napoleon crushed the Prussian army, the Prussian state sat down and built a school system with one purpose: produce humans who follow orders. Soldiers who would not run. Workers who would not think sideways. Bells between tasks. Seating in rows. Grades that permanently mark the good and the broken. Every bell your grandson hears today. Every row he sits in. Every grade that follows him into adulthood. That is a Prussian barracks, built to manage soldiers, rented to American children. And in 1918, a Harvard professor named Alexander Inglis wrote the instruction manual, a book called Principles of Secondary Education. 3 clinical words for what school was for: obedience, conformity, rank.
Have you ever wondered if the very system designed to educate us might actually be the one that limits us the most? Imagine being born with an innate curiosity, a natural thirst to explore, to question, to feel the world in its raw and vibrant state, only to be placed in a room at a desk, surrounded by walls, schedules, tests, and rules. Now imagine spending over a decade there, day after day, year after year. What if I told you that many of the thoughts you believe to be your own, many of the dreams you abandoned, and much of the anxiety you carry are not yours, but were planted, shaped, and reinforced by an invisible machine. A machine that begins its work the moment you're old enough to hold a pencil. You'll see clearly the subtle and not so subtle ways in which this machine operates, and how to break free from it. Let's begin this journey by asking a painful yet necessary question. What is the real purpose of school? On the surface, we're told it's about education, about preparing us for life. But as Arthur Schopenhauer, the 19th century German philosopher, once noted, the greatest achievements of the human mind are often those it accomplishes in spite of, not because of, institutional education. Schopenhauer saw schools as places of conformity, not of liberation. He argued that true knowledge comes from reflection, from suffering, from confronting life directly, not memorizing lifeless facts for tests we forget within a week. Nietzsche, too, wasn't kind to formal education. For him, Schooling was a factory of mediocrity. State education, he wrote, makes the individual superfluous. It seeks not the exceptional, but the average. And herein lies one of the first wounds that school inflicts upon us from childhood. It teaches us to fear standing out, to shrink ourselves into sameness, to value obedience over originality, to chase gold stars and grades instead of truth. From the moment a child enters the system, they're taught to raise their hand to speak, to ask for permission to use the bathroom, to sit for hours on end regardless of how their body or mind feels. This is not education, it's conditioning. The goal isn't to nurture the individual, but to shape a compliant worker, a predictable consumer, a quiet citizen. Think about this. When was the last time school taught you to deeply know yourself, to understand your emotions, to trust your intuition? Instead, we were trained to look outward for answers, to doubt our inner voice, to compare, compete, and conform. And this goes deeper than we think. When children express curiosity or creativity that doesn't fit the curriculum, they are often labeled disruptive. A child who questions too much is seen as a problem. But as Schopenhauer warned, talent hits a target no one else can hit. Genius hits a target no one else can see. Yet schools often punish the very minds that see what others can't. They smother the visionary to protect the standard. And the damage is not just intellectual, it's emotional. How many of us carry a subtle, persistent feeling of inadequacy because of grades we received in school? How many still fear speaking up because a teacher once mocked us in front of the class? How many stopped painting, writing, singing, or dreaming because someone told us we weren't good enough? School teaches us to attach our self-worth to performance, to external validation, and when that validation doesn't come, we begin to shrink inside. This is not by accident. Friedrich Nietzsche believed that systems of control survive by manufacturing weakness. He argued that society, including its educational systems, often seeks to tame the wildness of the human spirit, to mold individuals into something predictable, manageable. The school in this view becomes a training ground for obedience, not excellence, and this obedience often extends beyond the classroom. Once conditioned, we continue to seek approval from bosses, institutions, even social media likes, rarely questioning the system itself. We become excellent at playing roles, but poor at knowing who we truly are underneath the mask. But here's a deeper question. What if the very anxiety, burnout, and existential confusion so many adults feel today is not a flaw of the individual, but a symptom of a childhood spent in a system that never taught us how to think, only what to think? This is why both Nietzsche and Schopenhauer stressed solitude, self-reflection, and suffering as paths to true knowledge. They believed that only by breaking away from herd thinking could one become truly free.
When you say you know something, what does that mean? How do you actually know it's true? Most people, if you push them, will say something like this. I learned it in school. I read it in a book. Scientists say so. Experts agree. Everyone knows that. But those aren't answers. Those are appeals to authority. You're not saying you know. You're saying you trust someone else who claims to know, and maybe that's fine for most things. Life is short. You can't test everything yourself, but here's the problem. If you can't tell the difference between something you actually know and something you just believe because someone told you, then you're vulnerable. Vulnerable to being wrong, vulnerable to being fooled, vulnerable to cargo cult thinking, and that's dangerous. Let me tell you what I mean. After World War II, there were islands in the South Pacific where something strange happened. During the war, these islands were used as bases. Airplanes would land, soldiers would unload cargo, food, equipment, supplies. The islanders saw all this. They saw the soldiers doing things, building runways, wearing headphones, waving signal flags, talking into radios, and then planes would come full of cargo. So after the war, when the soldiers left and the planes stopped coming, the islanders wanted the cargo back. So they did something remarkable. They built runways out of dirt and wood. They carved headphones out of coconuts. They waved palm leaves like signal flags. They sat in bamboo control towers and made radio noises with their mouths. They did everything they saw the soldiers do, and then they waited for the planes. The planes never came. Why would they? The islanders were mimicking the form of science and technology without understanding the mechanism. They saw the ritual but missed the substance. The headphones didn't matter. The flags didn't matter. What mattered was the actual communication, the actual engineering, the actual infrastructure connecting those islands to the rest of the world. The cargo cult looked like the real thing, but it wasn't. Now, why am I telling you this? Because most of what passes for knowledge in the world is cargo cult knowledge. People learn the words. They learn the rituals. They learn to say the right things, but they don't actually know. They're wearing coconut headphones. How do you actually know something? Not believe it, not trust it, actually know it. Here's the answer, and it's going to sound too simple. You know something when you can test it, when you can make a prediction and check if it's right. That's it. That's the whole thing. Everything else is commentary. The test is the judge, not authority, not consensus, not tradition. The test. Here's what makes this so powerful. If your prediction is wrong, you're wrong. It doesn't matter how smart you are. It doesn't matter how beautiful your theory is. It doesn't matter how many people agree with you. If the test says no, you're wrong, and you have to change your mind. That's the rule. That's the only rule. This is what makes science different from everything else. Science isn't about being right. It's about being willing to be wrong. It's about making predictions and checking them and changing your mind when the evidence says you should. Most human systems don't work like that. Religion doesn't work like that. Politics doesn't work like that. Fashion doesn't work like that. They're based on authority, tradition, consensus, feelings. Science is based on one thing. Does it match the test? Now you might say, okay, but I can't test everything. I can't verify every scientific claim. I don't have a particle accelerator in my garage. Fair. You can't test everything. But here's what you can do. You can understand the difference between things you know because you tested them and things you believe because someone told you. And when you believe something because someone told you, you can ask, how do they know? What test did they do? What prediction did they make? Could I check it if I wanted to? If the answer is they don't know, they're just repeating what someone else said, then you're in cargo cult territory. If the answer is, here's the experiment, here's the data, here's how you could check it, then you're dealing with real knowledge. If tomorrow someone did an experiment and atoms didn't behave the way we predict, we'd have to change our minds. We'd have to say, okay, something's wrong with our model. That's the power of this approach. It's self-correcting. You can't lie to the experiment. You can lie to people. You can lie to yourself, but you can't lie to nature. Nature doesn't care about your theory. Nature does what it does. Your job is to figure out what that is. Now let's talk about why this matters. Why should you care about the difference between knowing and believing? Because the world is full of people who want you to believe things. Some of them mean well, some of them don't. Some of them are selling you products, some are selling you ideologies, some are just confused themselves. And if you can't tell the difference between real knowledge and cargo cult knowledge, you're defenseless. You'll believe whatever sounds good, whatever fits your preconceptions, whatever the loudest voice tells you. But if you understand how knowing actually works, you have a defense. You can ask, what's the test? What's the prediction? How do we check this? And if there's no test, if there's no way to check, then you know you're not dealing with knowledge. You're dealing with opinion, maybe informed opinion, maybe useful opinion, but not knowledge, economics, nutrition. Pick any field. The question is always the same. What's the prediction? What's the test? Did it work? If you can answer those questions, you're doing real thinking. If you can't, you're doing cargo cult thinking. Now, I'm not saying you have to become a scientist. I'm not saying you have to verify everything personally. What I'm saying is you have to know the difference. You have to be able to recognize when you're believing something because it's actually been tested, and when you're believing something because it sounds good, or because everyone else believes it, or because an authority told you to. And here's the hardest part. You have to be willing to be wrong. That's what most people can't handle. They'd rather be certain and wrong than uncertain and truthful. But certainty is cheap. Any fool can be certain. What's hard is saying, I think this is true, but I could be wrong. Let me check. Let me test. Let me see if the evidence supports it. That's intellectual honesty. That's real thinking. And it's rare. Most people skip straight to certainty. They hear something once, it fits their worldview, and boom, they're certain. That's not thinking. That's tribal signaling. You believe what your tribe believes. You reject what the other tribe believes. No testing, no predictions, just loyalty. Science doesn't care about tribes. Science doesn't care about politics. Science doesn't care about what you want to be true. Science only cares about one thing. What does the test say? And that's liberating. Because it means you can actually know things, really know them, not because someone told you, not because you read it somewhere, because you checked, because the predictions worked, because reality agreed with you. That's knowledge. Everything else is just belief, and belief is cheap. Knowledge is precious. So next time you think you know something, ask yourself, have I tested this? Could I test this? What prediction does this make? If I'm wrong, how would I know? If you can't answer those questions, you don't know. You believe, and that's fine. Belief has its place. But don't confuse the two. Don't wear coconut headphones and expect planes to land. Understand the mechanism. Test the predictions. Be willing to be wrong. That's how you know. That's the only way you know. Not comfort, not certainty. Truth.
Okay, welcome to Chapter 3, the restoration of critical thinking to destroy hive mind and groupthink mentality. Now, before we get started on this chapter, there's a couple things I want to say. First of all, if you're watching this as the chapters are being released, I apologize for the delay between each chapter, but this is actually, it's a lot harder than I ever thought it was going to be. Primarily because as I wrote this back from January through March, over 2.5 months, I expanded it to 8 chapters. I thought it was complete. I wanted to have the whole thing done by my birthday on April 4th, but that became impossible. But I wanted to at least have the introduction out by my birthday. And so I got that done. And then I honestly thought that I would have the whole thing done by the end of April. And here we are, midway through May, and I've only got 5 parts out so far. And the reason being is because as I sit down to record the chapters, I go through them. And I realize this isn't complete. This isn't finished yet. It doesn't tell the whole story the way it needs to be told. And so I start adding things. I start editing. And that's how chapter 1 became 3 parts. And how this chapter now has become 2 parts. Because as I tell the story, I'm also living my life. And I'm watching other videos. And I'm constantly taking in new information. And it's almost like serendipity, where things will come up as I'm working on a chapter that I say, oh my God, that's perfect for this chapter. So where the introduction that you just watched, the video montage, was originally just the quotes and the excerpt on the cargo cult from Richard Feynman. Those extra 2 videos about the Rockefeller and what schooling does to you, those were videos that I came across as I was working on chapter 3. So I added them there. And so what I did with chapter 3 here was I broke it down into 2 parts, which we'll get to in a second. But the other thing is I've sat down 3 times in the last 2 weeks to record this. And I just didn't have the right mindset to get through doing this, to make the presentation. And if you're not in the right mindset, the video is not going to come through the way that I want it to. And so I sat here, I started recording, and I just, for whatever reason, I wasn't in the right frame of mind. And so I stopped. And I went to work on other parts of the video book, the opening montage for other chapters and things like that. So I'm always working on it, but sitting down and actually doing the recording is much harder than most people. If you've never tried it yourself, it's a lot harder than people think it is, than just sitting down in front of a camera and talking. There's a lot of things that I need to get out and say. Things have to be clear in my mind, and sometimes I'm just not in that right frame of mind. So that's what's taking me so much longer to complete this project than I ever intended. But once it's done, it's going to be so incredibly powerful that once you see it as the whole and you understand why I laid out the introduction, chapter 1, chapter 2, this chapter, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 8, it's all going to flow. And you're going to understand why by the time all is said and done, I've done it the way that I've done it. Okay, so again, just you got to bear with me here. This chapter and chapter 4 should be out fairly quickly. There's 2 parts in this chapter now. Chapter 4 about the legal system should be fairly quick. It's pretty much done already. I just have to record it. But the other thing I want to say is that hopefully by now you've noticed a thread that's weaving throughout the book that ties everything together. And it all goes back to the original book that I started writing back in 2010 that became the trilogy of The Mind, the Body, and Soul. And the first book being focused on the mind. And that's the thread that's running through all of this. Because in chapter 1 I talked about the root of the problem with the human condition, with civilization right now, is the widespread belief that the system is legitimate. Okay, and that belief was programmed into the masses by the system itself. Now, until we understand that, and that's what this book is all about. It's about destroying that belief, because the system violates natural law in every way possible. And when we violate natural law, we suffer negative consequences. And that's why we have all the problems we have in the world today, because it is the system. So, obviously, the introduction was about belief, the American dream, what we thought it was, what it's become. Chapter 1 was about who's behind managing our beliefs, controlling the mind of the masses, the conscious and intelligent manipulation of our opinions and our habits. Who's behind it all, right? So, and in chapter 2 was all the beliefs I saw out there of people fighting over who was right and who was wrong in the Renee Good shooting. And we proved beyond any shadow of doubt that the system is lying to us. We know what's right. We can see it with our own eyes what happened. And so nothing is going to change in this world. And this is the primary key that we're going to get to in this chapter, and why I moved it from chapter 5 to chapter 3 is because until a large amount of people, a critical mass, learns to reclaim their mind, nothing's going to change. So this is such a vital key to moving humanity forward into a better world and healing the human condition. We have to learn to reclaim the full capability of our mind. And that's what I'm going to show you, because you're going to see in this chapter how they removed the tools to learn how to think from our curriculum on purpose. And then at the end of the chapter, I'm going to show you the curriculum that I began back in 2009 to fully reclaim the full capacity and capability of my mind, and why I've been able to create this video book after 19 years of learning and applying these skills to true knowledge and discerning the difference between the illusion of knowledge and objective truth. So that's what this whole thing is all about. We have to reclaim the mind. That's step number 1. Okay, and again, it's why I moved it up to chapter 3. But I had to show you what happened. That there is an invisible government that is the true ruling power of our world, that is consciously and intelligently manipulating the mind of the masses. All right? People need to understand that first. Okay, well, if we're being manipulated, what do we do about that? How do we take it back? And we're going to take you back here real quick to that final slide from chapter 1. It was that quote from a senior Bush administration aide. And we have to understand that we do live in an empire. Okay, this is the United States empire. We have become the evil empire in the world. And most of the world understands it. Most people in America don't see it that way. Right? But he says, we're an empire now. And when we act, we create our own reality. Right? And then we're just going to react to that reality that they keep creating. What this book is going to show you, especially once you get through with chapter 8, is how we become proactive in creating our own reality. A reality that aligns with natural law, which we're going to talk about in chapter 4. Because as long as we're aligned with the reality that's being created for us, humanity is never going to be free. And we're going to continue to suffer the consequences of this crony, capitalist, corrupt economic system that enriches a tiny percentage of the population at the expense of everybody else. So, this chapter is all about acquiring the tools necessary so that we can begin to create our own reality. Because without these skills, we'll never get there. All right? And I've realized the importance of this over the last, 17 years since I began learning it. Right? And it all started with me listening to interviews with Charlotte Iserbyt and John Taylor Gatto and realizing just how bad our education system had become. and coming to the realization that, you know what, I was probably never educated correctly either. So I went out and sought the curriculum that I needed. And it was Brett Vanot's School Sucks podcast that slowly started acclimating me to the idea that, hey, these tools were removed, and if you really want to reclaim the mind, this is what you need to do. Okay, and I've probably listened to 100 episodes of his podcast, and that took me to other places, other podcasts where I learned. I'm going to show you at the end of part 2 of chapter 3 here exactly what I went through to learn and reclaim the mind that I now have today. Okay? So, let's take a look at what this chapter has become now. I broke it down into part 1, how the system programmed billions to blindly accept the system as legitimate authority, as well as its propaganda and education as objective reality. Okay, so the system has been programming you since birth to accept the system as, well, this is the only way that things can be. This is a reality and we just have to accept it, right? And they've also programmed you to believe that their propaganda and education is objective truth and reality. But it's not. We're going to show you how it all happened in this chapter. And then part 2, so basically part 1 is this is how we got to the problem. And then part 2 is going to be the re-education process that everyone programmed by the system must take to restore the full capability of their mind to comprehend objective truth and reality as it is. Not as you want it to be, not as you've been programmed to believe it is, but objective truth as it is. Because again, most of the people in this world are operating, living their lives in a false reality. And they have no idea how to break free. Many people have acknowledged that things are wrong, that they're living in a completely broken system, but they have no idea where to begin getting out of this mess. And that's what this entire video book is all about. Okay, so let's go back to part 1. How the system programmed billions to blindly accept the system as legitimate authority, as well as its propaganda and education as objective reality. Now, let's go back all the way to the beginning of written history, where history first started being written and documented. Ancient Sumeria. Essentially, the same system of hierarchy, of top-down command and control, we have power, you don't, you do as we say, has been in existence for over 6 millennia. Okay? There has always been a ruling class, there has always been a priest class, and then there's always been the worker class, the proletariat, the subjects, the slaves, whatever you want to call them, right? This is the way it's always been. Now, right around the 15th century, well, let's back up a little bit. So basically, everything that everybody understood was given to them by the ruling class and the priest class. And you either believe this or not. You either conform to this or you were outcast by the society. So conformity was the way of life. Just do as you're told and shut up. And for the most part, everybody was illiterate. Nobody knew how to write, read. They just knew how to communicate. And they communicated the ideas that were programmed into their mind by the ruling class and the priest class. Okay? Now, let's get to the 15th century. Coming up to the point in the mid-15th century, we had written texts. And written texts and books took hours and hours and hours, weeks, months, years to create. They were mostly written by monks in monasteries or people dedicated to sharing the knowledge. But still, it was only the wealthy class that could afford these books because of the amount of time that it took to create them, until they were only available to the ruling class, the wealthy class, and the priest class. And then in the mid-15th century, we had the first, I guess, great leap in human evolution as far as the ascension of consciousness. And that was a creation of the Gutenberg printing press. Now, this significantly contributed to the rise of intellectualism by enabling the mass production of books, which made knowledge more accessible and affordable. This democratization of information fostered increased literacy and the spread of new ideas, ultimately leading to cultural and scientific advancements during the Renaissance. So once people were able to access alternative information from what they've been told by the ruling and priest class for thousands of years, people learned to read, people were able to get ideas that were contrary to their beliefs, and the free thinkers of the world said, you know what, maybe the world isn't the way we've been told it is. Maybe there is a better way. And this led to the Renaissance. And this led to a whole new Enlightenment period where people decided that maybe this rich class, this ruling class, this priest class isn't all they're cracked up to be, right? And because of the printing press, we also saw the rise of the middle class. All right, the Gutenberg printing press significantly contributed to the rise of the middle class by making books more affordable and accessible, which increased literacy and education among the general population. This democratization of knowledge allowed the middle class to gain more influence and participate in cultural and intellectual life, breaking the monopoly of the literate elite. And there it is right there. The literate elitists, the ruling class, priest class, for 5,000 years up to this point, had literal monopoly on knowledge. And so that's why the people were always kept in the dark and just basically had to do as they're told and live the life that you're granted and what have you. And that's the world they're trying to take us back to now. This neo-feudalism that we're returning to, especially right now in America. Everything that's happening right now is not coincidence. It's not by accident. It's all being done by design. Everything is being made so expensive, so unaffordable. This is the long play Hegelian dialectic to return us to an age where they're going to have a monopoly on knowledge, on literacy, on the economy by forcing us into a digital prison. Because once the current economy breaks, that's going to be their solution. That's going to be their synthesis to this decades-long Hegelian dialectic playing out right now of building up a middle class, building a world where they can create this digital infrastructure. All these data centers going up around the country are not so you can make TikTok videos with AI slop. They're going to be the data centers that control everything. That's ultimately what they're going to be turned into. Okay? So yes, resist them with every ounce of energy you have. Getting back to a monopoly of the literate elite. What they realized after a couple hundred years, because they still had control, they allowed the middle class to rise up. But Pandora's box was already open. And they knew they could never put books back in. You could burn books, but more books will be made, right? What they decided they needed to do was they needed to pervert the knowledge going into books so that they could control the perception of reality from people reading the books. And one of the greatest perversions of knowledge, I think, in history that many people still adhere to this day is the Bible. And so let's look at it this way. True knowledge has esoteric meaning. The people who understand the world as it is, objective reality, objective truth. They have esoteric knowledge of reality. What they've done is they've given the world, through their books, an exoteric version, a perverted version of esoteric knowledge. And that's exactly what the King James Version of the Bible is. It's a historical account of a story that doesn't at all align with the esoteric meaning of the true Gnostic Gospels, the original texts that were occulted, hidden from the masses. And so you were given an exoteric version of knowledge. They'll understand the esoteric meaning of all of this. And that's what the occult means. It means hidden. So when people speak of the occult and Satanism, that to me is the true essence of Satanism. It's hiding the knowledge that would free humanity from this satanic system of control. Right? That's what Satanism is. It's the occulting of knowledge that would free humanity. It's the hoarding of knowledge that allows them to maintain control and commit their crimes against humanity, to commit their crimes against nature. That's the essence of Satanism. Right? It has nothing to do with a horned devil. All of that is exoteric stories that you've been given to make you believe that this is the eternal battle between good and evil. Right? If you want to learn the esoteric meanings of the Bible, there's a lot of great sources out there right now. But the one that I learned all this from was Santos Bonacci. And I'll throw a screenshot up here in this video. But I don't know, probably around 2011, I believe it was, it was really weird. I had heard the term know thyself 4 times in a matter of 2 weeks from 4 completely disparate sources. And that 4th time I said, I keep hearing that term know thyself. Temet nose. And so I went and did a Google search. Know thyself. And this video came up from Santos Bonacci. It was about a 9-hour presentation called Know Thyself. I said, this seems to be what all these hints are taking me to. And so I watched it. And it's basically, his story was, he was a Jehovah's Witness for 20 years, knew the Bible inside and out, forwards and backwards, and learned the esoteric meaning of the Bible, of the exoteric version we're giving. He learned the esoteric meaning, and so he teaches it in this video called Know Thyself. So I highly recommend going and watching that. If you want to know the true meaning of the Bible, that's one of the best free courses you can take out there. But so once you understand that, and you understand that the current Bible that most of the people refer to was authorized by King James, right? Now, not many people know much about King James because they just say, well, it's the KJV Bible and it's this is the official Bible, right? And I came across this first quote doing research for this book, and it really goes to show you the level of narcissism and just supremacy that these people have, these elitists have in the world. The ones who control you, the ones who control the information, the knowledge. Let's just read it. The state of monarchy is the supremest thing upon earth. For kings are not only God's lieutenants upon earth and sit upon God's throne, but even by God himself, they are called gods. So this is their attitude. The monarchs, the rulers, the ruling class of this world believe that they are gods in this world. And that this is their world to run, to take whatever they want from, to live as they choose, to live as they please, and so that they've created this system that enables them to live as gods in this world. And that's what the billionaire class is today. They've become the new monarchs, right? Because we do live in a de facto fascist plutocracy now. It's no longer a monarchy, it's a fascist plutocracy. And that's pretty much how the entire world operates. Even though they tell you many of these countries are communist, they're actually fascist plutocracies with this veneer of communism. So that we over here in America, they've told you, oh, we're a democratic republic and communism is our enemy. We must fight them. We must beat them in this race to AI dominance, right? This is all propaganda. And it has nothing to do with what we the people really need to live good lives of meaning, right? We have to break free of all of this. Another thing that he said was God has power to create or destroy, make or unmake at his pleasure, to give life or send death, to judge all, and to be judged nor accountable to none, to raise low things and to make high things low at his pleasure. And to God are both soul and body due. And that's true to a certain extent. I actually wrote a blog about this probably 4 or 5 years ago. I'll put it up here on the screen so you can see it. It was my most popular blog ever. It got hundreds of shares, dozens of comments. It really resonated with people because nobody alive today in this world knows what God is. We don't have the capacity to understand at this level of reality who or what created us, why we're here. But we can use logic to inform us as to what we're supposed to do here. That's what this blog was all about. I think I made an audio version of it too. But anyway, so this was his version of God. God is all powerful, right? God can do whatever he wants. Now this is what he said about himself. And the like power have kings. They make and unmake their subjects. They have power of raising and casting down, of life and of death. Judges over all their subjects and in all causes, and yet accountable to none but God only. So they believe they're on equal standing of the Creator. And if you look at these oligarchs and these plutocrats and these technocrats, and you listen to their interviews and their speeches at Davos, and they all have this same air of superiority that without them we would be nothing. And it's just, it's a kind of psychosis that just feeds into the mind of people who acquire massive amounts of wealth. It's a form of sickness. It's mental illness is what it is. To equate yourself with something as great as the force that created everything. No, we're all subservient to God. We're all subservient to natural law. And that's the only thing that we are subservient to. We're not subservient to kings. We're not subject to man-made authority. And we're going to get to that in the next chapter, and as well as chapter 8. We are subject only to the Creator and the laws of the Creator, which is natural law. Okay? So everything that these ruling classes created throughout the last 6 millennia to control the mind of man is a perversion of what our true Creator intended for us, to be stewards of this world. So what they did was they started perverting the knowledge and putting into books the illusion of knowledge. Because if you can pervert the knowledge, and as you'll see at the end of part 2 of chapter 3 here, I'm going to show you how to discern between truth and fiction, between objective truth and real knowledge versus the illusion of knowledge. Because that's what they took out of the curriculum beginning in the middle of the 19th century. So from the advent of the printing press, the middle of the 15th century, 1450 roughly, for the next 400 years, you had the rise of the middle class, you had the rise of intellectualism, the Renaissance, the Enlightenment, and they realized that it was people's access to information, alternative to what they were told to believe, that was creating a threat to their power. Right? So they began perverting the knowledge and seeding ideas through books that are just patently false. And then the next step was to pervert the curriculum, which taught people how to think, and convert it into one of teaching people what to believe, one of conformity, one of obedience, as we saw in that opening montage. That's what the curriculum in schooling is designed to do, to create obedient, conformist citizens, slaves, subjects, whatever you want to call them. That's what the education system was designed to do. And it all began at the beginning of the 19th century. And it all started in Prussia, as we saw again in that opening montage. But one of the architects of this schooling model was Johann Gottlieb Fichte. He lived from 1762 to 1814. So he was one of the architects of this Prussian schooling model. So we're talking 350 years after the printing press, right? So they understood, these elitists, something needs to be done, or this middle class is going to rise and they're going to realize they don't need us. So something needs to be done. Now, Fichte was a German idealist, philosopher whose ideology led to the rise of National Socialism, the Nazi Party, and whose beliefs founded the Prussian schooling model, which would be adopted in America in the mid-19th century to slowly undermine critical thinking and our individualist way of life. And this quote here is so telling, because again, it expands upon the quote from King James, from the mindset of these elitists throughout history, all throughout history, right? They had already started perverting knowledge through books, and now they had to change the school system to ensure that the masses didn't learn how to think. Okay? So, here's his quote. The schools must fashion the person, fashion him in such a way that he simply cannot will otherwise than what you wish him to will. Education should aim at destroying free will, so that after pupils are thus schooled, they will be incapable throughout the rest of their lives of thinking or acting otherwise than as their schoolmasters would have wished. When this technique has been perfected, every government that has been in charge of education for more than one generation will be able to control its subjects securely without the need of armies or policemen. And that is the essence of the Prussian schooling model, which was picked up from Prussia and brought over here and dropped into America in the beginning and the middle of the 19th century. And slowly but surely over the next 60 years, all the way up until Rockefeller and Carnegie founded the Education Board in 1903, 1902, 1903, that solidified this model in American schools. And they ensured that this curriculum was taught to everybody. And so generation after generation after generation was never taught how to think. They were taught what to believe. And that's why we have the world we live in today. Because your parents and their parents and their parents and their parents and their parents were all given a curriculum that taught them obedience and conformity. And believe this, because the experts say. Anytime you hear anybody on social media or just wherever in your neighborhood, in your community, regurgitating that programmed hive mind nonsense that you know to be false because you're a free thinker, you've broken free, you've actually educated yourself. It's because of this. It's because this is the way the school systems have evolved. And teachers think they're doing a good job. They think they're educating, but they're using a curriculum that's not teaching them. And you have your outliers like John Taylor Gatto, and there are probably many great teachers in this country who actually do break with the curriculum and actually teach their students how to think, but they're rare. They're few and far between. And that's why John Taylor Gatto became Teacher of the Year in New York State before he resigned, because he saw what the system was doing and went on to write the books to alert people that school is the problem. So now we have the whole history of a ruling class basically controlling the population by controlling their mind. All right, that's what Bernays talked about in propaganda. It's still pervasive to this day. So if we want to end this vicious cycle of mind control, and that's what it is, I won't mince words, it's mind control. Almost everyone in the United States and throughout the world is under a very sophisticated form of mind control. They think they have free will. They think they have knowledge. They think they know things about things that they don't know. It's all an illusion of knowledge. And it's all because of the system. And so we're going to, let's look at one more quote here from Frederick Taylor Gates. Now, he was one of Rockefeller's business managers. He was one of the primary factors in convincing Rockefeller to create these tax-free foundations so that he could hide his wealth. And it was a PR move to make him look like he's helping society with his philanthropy. All right, this is the guy right here that convinced Rockefeller to do all these things. Now, this quote here has been debated by the debunkers out there who think they're so much smarter than everybody. But they try and claim that they were just trying to raise up the poor rural folk. But for the most part, the poor rural folk had a better life than the people living in these filthy industrialized cities where all the disease was, right? That they were working on building, the second industrial revolution, right? They already had this education model there, but the people in the country were actually living much richer lives. And they were actually learning in the little white schoolhouse. And they were learning the classical liberal education. And so they had to come in and take these schools over. And they use the excuse of they're poor, they're destitute, they need our help. Okay, this is the attitude, the superiority complex of the elitists to come in and say, we're here to help you. The tyranny of good intentions, right? So let's go over this quote here. Is there aught of remedy for this neglect of rural life? Let us at least yield ourselves to the gratifications of a beautiful dream that there is. In our dream, we have limitless resources, and the people yield themselves with perfect docility to our molding hand. All right, where do we hear that word molding again? Edward Bernays, propaganda. The Fabian socialists molding the world in their image, right? They just love to mold things because we're too stupid to mold ourselves. The present educational conventions fade from our minds, and unhampered by tradition, the tradition of what we're going to teach you here in part 2 of chapter 3, the tradition of classical liberal education, we work our own goodwill upon a grateful and responsive rural folk. Like they're just going to bow down to us. Oh, thank you so much. We shall not try to make these people or any of their children into philosophers or men of learning or of science. They don't want people to think. Philosophy is love of knowledge. right? So that's men of learning. We are not to raise up from among them authors, orators, poets, or men of letters. We shall not search for embryo great artists, painters, musicians, nor will we cherish even the humbler ambition to raise up from among them lawyers, doctors, preachers, politicians, statesmen, of whom we now have ample supply. We are not to follow the admonitions of the good apostle who said, mind not high things, but condescend to men of low degree. So this is what they thought of the rural folk, the farmers. Just stay out there on your land and make our food for us and remain stupid. Remain in your place. That's your place. We don't want you to learn that essentially we're using you as our food supply. You don't need to know that. You just need to continue supplying our food for us. And that's why we're going to bring this education system in, to make you believe that we're educating you. But our education model is just going to keep you in your place so that you never rise above this station in life, because we need you there. Right? That's the true meaning behind this, because this is the way the elitists and the wealthy ruling class think and have always thought throughout history. They believe themselves to be gods, living gods in our world. It's a psychopathy. Putting therefore all high things quite behind us, we turn with a sense of freedom and delight to the simple, lowly, needful things that promise well for rural life. For the task that we set before ourselves is a very simple as well as a very beautiful one. To train these people as we find them for a perfectly ideal life just where they are. So we're going to train you to stay right where you are. And everybody has their place, and we're going to make sure you stay there. That's what this is all about. Now, this is not to denigrate farmers, or they're the hardest working people in America, and they're being taken over by corporations and these massive conglomerates who are buying up farmland and making it impossible for the small American farmer to flourish. And what I'm going to show you in Chapter 8 is a model that's going to restore the American farmer to the greatness that they deserve as providers for the population. And they'll be appreciated in a way they've never been appreciated in American history. Because what we need is a clean food supply. We need a farming system that aligns with natural law. And we're going to need millions of small farmers to create the healthy food that we need to consume. Or we're going to destroy the factory farming model. We're going to destroy the corporate oligarchy that's controlling farming in America and throughout the world. Because we're going to take our power back. I'm going to show you how we do that in Chapter 8. But they want to control everything, so they have to control the mind. So we already talked about propaganda. We already showed you how they bought up the media, how they bought up control of the government, and now we're showing you how they took control of education. So that was our firewall, as I showed you in part 1 of Chapter 1. Government, media, and education. That was supposed to be the firewall for we the people. All three parts of that hierarchy have been taken over by the powers that be above them. And now they're used as a weapon against us. Education is a weapon, the media is a weapon, and government's a weapon. As I showed you, it's a tool, it's a hammer, used to extract our wealth and to pound us into place when we don't conform. Okay? We have to reclaim our minds. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish up this part of Chapter 3. And we're going to go through this whole video, because this is one of the videos that I came across as I was finishing up building this chapter, and why I decided to break it into 2 parts. It's so powerful. I'm just going to go through the whole thing. I'm going to comment. It's going to be like a reaction video. But this is from the Deep Thinking Man channel on YouTube. An excellent channel. I highly recommend going and subscribing to it. Yes, it is one of those channels that is produced using AI, but there are some AI channels out there that are better than others. They're just using it as a tool to speed up the process. I refuse to use it. All of my content is 100% made by me. I don't have a team. I don't use AI. I read everything. I record everything. This is authentic intelligence. What you're getting from me is authentic intelligence. But the message of this video is so powerful. I'm going to go through the whole thing. And just to read the description here. In this eye-opening exploration, we dissect the fundamental differences between education and schooling, revealing how traditional systems often prioritize control over genuine learning. Drawing on Machiavelli's insights, we examine how institutions condition individuals to conform, suppress creativity, and prioritize obedience. This video challenges viewers to reconsider what true education means and to question the hidden curriculum that molds compliant citizens. By fostering critical thinking and self-awareness, which is what we're going to teach you in part 2 of chapter 3 here, we encourage you to explore the deeper purpose of learning beyond mere utility. Discover how to reclaim your intellectual independence and embrace a path of personal freedom. And even in this video that we're going to cover, they don't even touch the surface of what we're going to get into in part 2 of chapter 3 here. But it's a really powerful video, so that's why we're going to go over it. This journey is not just about escaping the confines of conventional schooling. It's about awakening to your potential and redefining success on your own terms. So we're going to watch this video. I'm going to put my headset in here, my earpiece.
School isn't education, it's control, Machiavelli warned us. Imagine this. You're 6 years old. You're full of questions, energy, and a wild, untamed hunger to explore the world. You ask why the sky is blue, why people lie, why birds fly south in the winter, and what does the world do in response to this beautiful chaos of curiosity? It puts you in a room with rows of desks, a bell that rings every hour, and someone at the front telling you when to speak, when to sit, when to write, and, most importantly, what to think.
Now, just that first part there, it's so profound because that's exactly what school does. It destroys this curiosity, right? I mean, I still maintain the curiosity I had as a child. I'm always asking why, which is why I've done all this work for the last 19 years. Because once I learned something that's contrary to what I always believed, I want to know why I believe that, right? So I've always maintained the curiosity of a child. I remember when I went to France in 1998 for the World Cup. I actually won a trip with Hewlett Packard. That's back when I was in the computer industry selling computers. And I got to go to the World Cup in 1998, and I got to go see the USA versus Iran game. And we had a whole week there. And the first 3 days were all scheduled out for us. We flew to Paris. We got a couple hours to explore Paris. Then we had to hop on a bullet train down to Lyon, where the game was. And I still remember, like, when we were in Lyon, I wanted to see as much of that city as I could, because Lyon has the oldest Roman ruins outside of Italy in all of Europe. And it was just fascinating to go and explore this city and see these ancient ruins, because I've always had this curiosity. You know, we had a day to explore Lyon. The first night we were taken to a 5-star restaurant and given a 7-course meal. Duck l'orange, the whole 9 yards. And then the second night we went to the game. And it was all VIP. It was really kind of cool. You know, the corporate sponsorships, and we saw everything from behind the scenes of how the elite live, really. But those 2 days that we had free, my buddy and I were exploring all of Lyon. And after that second night, after we got through with the game, we had 5 days to do whatever we wanted. And some people stayed in Lyon, some people went back to Paris. I wanted to see as much of France as I could, possibly. They also gave us, I believe it was $3,000 each cash to spend. So it was the trip, all expenses paid, the game, the hotels, everything, and then $3,000. So I'm like, I want to rent a car and go down to the French Riviera and explore as much as I can down there. This is the kind of curiosity I've always had. I want to explore. I want to learn. And I still remember. So basically we set up for the next 5 days. It was going to be driving from Lyon straight into Saint-Tropez, spend a day on the beach in Saint-Tropez, then go to Cannes, and then go to Nice, spend a couple days in Nice, and then take the 10-hour train from Nice back to Paris in time to catch our plane back to the United States. And so we rented a car, and I still remember, like, because the point I'm getting to is the curiosity of a child. As you're driving from Lyon down to Saint-Tropez, you have the Alps to the east of you. And I still remember the awe, just being in wonderment and awe of staring at these mountains and the absolute beauty that I was witnessing on this drive. I think it was like 5 hours, 6 hour drive from Lyon down to Saint-Tropez. But it was just so awe-inspiring. And even, the night before we left, I mean, I remember when we got to Saint-Tropez, we were exhausted because we didn't really get much sleep. We were up all night in the city center. And, back then, 98, Iran, and here we are all again, was supposed to be our arch enemy, right? But we had just gone to a game where Iran defeated the United States. I think it was 3-1 or 3-2 was the final score. But in the city center, it was filled with Iranians. And most of them spoke English. And it turns out they were amongst the nicest people I've ever met in my entire life. And again, this is what the propaganda does, is they get you to hate people so that when they go to war with them, you will accept it and not be bothered by it. But the Iranian people that I met they were gracious, they were intelligent, they were so intelligent. And most of them lived here in the United States, but some were still living in Iran. And my God, it's completely destroyed my perception of Iranians because of a lifetime of propaganda from the United States. And that's what propaganda does to people. It just warps your mind. It warps your perception of reality. And being able to interact with these just incredibly wonderful people in Lyon, France, after the game was life-changing for me. Because it showed me that people aren't what we're told they are. Okay? We have to break free of this perception that the propaganda in a lifetime of the school system has created. Oh, yeah. I still maintain to this day, at 59 years old, the awe of a child and the wonderment and the curiosity. I still continue to learn every single day. There's not a day that goes by, especially since I woke up back in 2007, that I have not taken time to learn something every single day. With 6,935, 40 days, something like that by now. I have a thirst for knowledge. I am a true philosopher. I have a love of knowledge. And I want to share it with the world so that we can fix the world. That's why I do everything that I do. I still have the curiosity of a child.
It's called school, but is that really education? Or is it something more subtle and more sinister? Let's start with a brutal truth. We confuse schooling with learning, but the two are not the same. Education, in its raw, original form, is liberation. It's the unfolding of the mind.
There you go. And I did a video as part of my foundational video series for Kaizen and the Pursuit of Truth, where I talk about, you just mentioned the word liberation. And where that word, the root of the word, is where we get library, liberal, and I show how that the meaning of that word has been perverted to where what most people think of liberal today is not even close to the real meaning of the word. The real meaning of the word is liberation, the unfolding of the mind. And I explain it all in, I believe it's part 4 of my foundational video series. So I think it's titled How the Perversion of One Word Has Decimated Society. It is basically the true meaning of the word liberal. It's a great video. So a true liberal is one who understands knowledge of truth, one who has knowledge of truth. A true liberal is someone who is not operating under the illusion of knowledge because they've acquired the skills that I'm going to teach you in part 2 of chapter 3 here.
It's the awakening of consciousness. But schooling, as it exists today, is about conformity. It's about control. And
there you go. That's the key right there. The next great leap in human evolution is going to be a revolution of the mind, an ascension in higher consciousness. And that's why I'm doing this video book, and that's why I'm doing this chapter, and why I moved to chapter 3, because this is the first step. We have to reclaim our mind. We have to ascend in consciousness. Right? We have to break free of the programming that we got in school. And the programming we've been subjected to our entire lives by the system via propaganda. Okay?
that sounds like a conspiracy theory. Maybe that's because you were taught to think that way in school. Machiavelli, the philosopher of power, manipulation and human nature, understood something most modern thinkers are too uncomfortable to admit, that institutions are rarely what they claim to be. They are, more often than not, instruments of control disguised as virtue.
And that's exactly why Frederick Taylor Gates had Rockefeller set up the education board. Right? It was disguised as virtue. It was disguised as philanthropy. But it was actually an instrument of control. You just said it. I mean, that's why I'm playing this video, because there's so many little nuggets in here that show you how we got here. And that's exactly what it was. The education board was set up disguised as virtue. Right? Because again, Rockefeller was largely hated by the population back then. So the public relations, Frederick Taylor Gates, philanthropy, give $325 million to schooling, and you'll be looked at as a hero. There you go.
He saw through the illusions of morality that rulers used to manipulate the masses, and he'd have seen through modern schooling just as clearly, because what is school if not a perfectly designed mechanism for producing obedience under the guise of enlightenment?
You just said about the illusion of morality, and that kind of refers to King James. And again, this ruling class always makes you believe, because they have control of the propaganda machine, they have control of the messaging, they make you believe that they're better than you, that they care about you, that they're spending this money to make you better, to make things better. It's all a lie, because as we see now in late stage capitalism, where everything's crumbling and they're taking the cream off the top and we're giving the scraps, right? And ultimately we're going to end up in a neo-feudalistic world where they control everything, they own everything, you own nothing, and you're forced to be happy. This is what I'm trying to show you, and also how we stop that. How we take our power back, we rise up, we unite, and take our power back. It's all going to be laid out in chapter 8. And they do it all under the guise of enlightenment, right? We're enlightening you. No, you're not.
Think about it. The structure of school mirrors the structure of a prison. Bells, schedules, uniforms, surveillance, punishment for deviation. And no, I'm not exaggerating. Ask yourself, what's the first thing school teaches you? Is it math? Language? Science? No. The first thing school teaches you is how to be managed, how to wait for permission, how to suppress your instincts, how to sit still even when your body wants to move, and how to speak only when asked, how to memorize what you're told without questioning why. And here's where it gets darker, because this isn't just about discipline. It's about shaping your soul into something useful to someone else. School doesn't teach you how to think. It teaches you what to think. It rewards obedience and punishes originality. It tells you there's one right answer, one correct method, one way to succeed. And who benefits from that? Not you, not your creativity, not your freedom, but the system, the economy, the machine. Machiavelli would have recognized this instantly. He believed that rulers must maintain control not just through force, but through illusion, through spectacle, through institutions that appear to serve the people, but actually serve power. And what better illusion than school? An institution where you believe you're being equipped for life, while actually being conditioned to fit a mold. And the most diabolical part is that it works so well, we don't even question it. We're too busy chasing grades, diplomas, degrees, external validations that keep us locked in a cycle of performance and approval. Let me ask you something dangerous. When was the last time school taught you something that changed your life?
I can answer that. It was 3 things. Number 1 was my typing class, senior year of high school. I learned to type on an IBM Selectric 2, and that changed my life, because that one skill that I acquired in high school has enabled me to this very day to sit down at my computer, stare at my screen, think what I want to appear on that, and I can type the words that come to my mind as quickly on the screen. So basically I can type as fast as I think. And it's only because of that skill that I acquired in high school. So that changed my life. Another one is my junior year of college, when we were learning about Black-Scholes pricing models and the options market. And when I found out that you could make 10 times the amount of money on shorting a stock while a company was collapsing than actually buying and holding and sharing in the profits, I said, that doesn't sound right. How is that even possible? Where is this money coming from, right? And I questioned my teacher, and we're going to talk about this in part 4 of chapter 8. I'm going to get into more details on how basically what they turned Wall Street into a casino. And the amount of money that's out there in the world that people are using to buy up the world and to control things is 10 times greater than the actual GDP of what we the people create in products and services. And that's how we, again, have the world we live in today. It all violates natural law. But when I learned that in 1992 as a junior in college, that changed my life. Because when I came across America, Freedom, and Fascism in 2007, everything clicked. I said, they control us all through the economic system. And then I learned about propaganda and the school system and the media and everything else. We're fully controlled from birth to death. And if you're not a free thinker, if you haven't gone out and educated yourself in the way that I'm going to show you in part 2 of chapter 3 here, you're still under mind control. Most of your beliefs were programmed. And until you undo that programming, you're a slave to the system. Simple as that. And as long as the majority is slave to the system remains in place. I'm going to show you how we undo that system. And we create a new system that empowers every individual to fulfill their full potential in life and live in abundance and live in peace and harmony and fulfillment of what we're meant to be here in this world, in this body, so that our souls can ascend to higher levels of consciousness as we move throughout life after life after life. Because I don't believe in YOLO. I believe our soul is eternal. And I believe we keep on coming back until we learn. I know I'm an old soul, just based on experiences I've had in my life. But I'll talk about that in the future more. But anyway, yeah, so there's two things that changed my life. I thought there was a third, maybe there's not. But all the rest of the time was just wasted time. Literally wasted time. And how much do you remember from school? Right? I mean, I did learn how to read. It's more of my curiosity and my intellect by which I acquired the knowledge that I have today. It had nothing to do with schooling. In fact, I hated school. So much so that by the time I got out of high school, I graduated 5th from the bottom of my class of 525 students with a 1.97 GPA. And I've said this before, I wear it as a badge of honor now because it just showed me that I was not able to be controlled. I was not able to be manipulated and programmed like everybody else was. I rejected it. I mean, I did my work. I got through whatever, got my grades. That's one of the reasons I joined the military, because I didn't have the grades to get into college, and I was fine with that. But when I got to college, I was ready. And, that was the third thing. I know there was 3 things. When I got to college, I minored in philosophy. That was my first taste of critical thinking, was in my logic courses. I learned things that I'd never learned before. And so that's when I began to think critically. I still had many years before I put all the pieces together, but my philosophy courses are where I began to think differently. So anyway, let's move on.
Not something that got you a good grade, not something that helped you pass a test, but something that transformed how you see the world, how you love, how you suffer, how you live. If you're struggling to answer, maybe that's the point. Maybe school was never meant to do that. Because real education is dangerous. It makes you question everything. It makes you ungovernable. It gives you the tools to dismantle the very systems that try to shape you. And no power structure wants that. No ruler wants citizens who ask, why does this system exist? So instead, they give you school, a socially acceptable cage, a place where you spend the most intellectually fertile years of your life, learning how to be quiet, polite, and useful. Now, before you think I'm just ranting, let me clarify, there are great teachers. There are moments of magic. There are classrooms where minds awaken. But those are exceptions, not the rule.
Yeah, we talked about that earlier with John Taylor Gatto, and yeah, there are teachers around the country who do inspire their students to learn. But going back to that last part, yeah, I mean, that's exactly why the school system was put into place, because the ruling class doesn't want you to think. They don't want people to challenge the system. All right, and that's what this book is all about doing. It's about challenging the system, about showing you the true nature of your cage, and ultimately showing you how we break free of it and dissolve the cage forever. Okay? So
the system wasn't built for enlightenment. It was built for efficiency, for predictability, for control. And here's the Machiavellian twist. The system doesn't need to be evil to be effective. It just needs to be useful to those in power. That's the genius of Machiavelli's insight. He saw that systems don't sustain themselves through cruelty alone. They sustain themselves by convincing you they're necessary, that they're for your good, that they're natural. And once you believe that, you'll defend the very thing that limits you. So the question becomes, what kind of mind do you want? One that's certified, approved, and safe? Or one that's dangerous, curious, and free? Because if you want the latter, then school won't give it to you. You'll have to take it for yourself, the curriculum of obedience. Why you're taught to serve, not think. Let's look at what school really teaches. Not just the subjects, but the hidden curriculum, the silent lessons embedded in every rule, every test, every grade. Because beneath the surface of reading, writing, and arithmetic lies something far more insidious, the art of compliance.
So there you go. Going back to that last part, it's our choice. Do we want a mind that has been programmed to be obedient, to be conformist, or do we want a mind that frees us from the system? And if you want a free mind, you have to take it. You have to create it. Because it wasn't given to you, and it's not going to be given to you in this reality, in this system. I began learning process in college with my philosophy courses, but it wasn't until I was probably 42 years old that I really finally took the deep dive on the classical liberal education, which is what I'm going to teach you in part 2 here of chapter 3. But if you don't have the desire to learn, then you're just going to be a cog in the machine for the rest of your life and enable the machine to keep on running over humanity to a point where we are going to be in that neo-feudalistic dystopian nightmare. Right? Nobody wants to be there. So we have to take action now before it's too late.
You're not just being taught facts. You're being taught how to submit, and once you see it, you can't unsee it.
And there you go. Once you see the system for what it is, you can't unsee it anymore. And there again, that's why I'm doing this video book, to show you the system as it is, to show you how they got you, how they captured your mind at a very young age, and why people believe what they believe today and believe that, oh, there's nothing we can do about it. No, there's everything we can do about it. First step is reclaiming your mind. Once you see it for what it is, you can't unsee it. Right? Once I saw it back in 2007, I couldn't unsee it. And I've been working every day for 19 years now to make sure that everybody can see it so that we can't unsee it, so that we want to do something about it. But this is the first step.
From the moment you enter the school system, you're placed into hierarchies. Not natural hierarchies of wisdom, character, or creativity, but artificial ones based on standardized testing, age, obedience, and conformity.
And they do that very early on. The teachers, they understand who the thinkers are, who stands out, and they may be pushed ahead in grades, or some may be held back, but the teachers are trained to put people into categories. And once they're in categories, they'll pretty much remain there through their entire school career, never to break free. And the ones who do show some glimmer of hope, they're put into programs that make them even more conformist. They're told they're special. They're told that they're smarter than the rest. And they'll become the academics in the institutions that regurgitate the hive mind nonsense. They'll become the politicians. They take these people who show promise and they make them even more conforming to the system. It is insidious, like you said earlier.
You learn quickly that praise is given to those who follow instructions, not to those who ask uncomfortable questions.
And I was one of the ones who asked uncomfortable questions. I was always in trouble. And thank God I went to school in the 70s and early 80s, before they started drugging everybody and telling them they were ADD, ADHD. Unfortunately, that happened to my nephew. He was labeled ADD, ADHD, and he was put on Ritalin. And I wish his parents had talked to me. My sister, I really wish to this day that she had consulted me, because I would have said, absolutely not. Do not ever put him on those drugs, because it will destroy his brain. And it will also teach him that for any problem in life, from here forward, a pill or a drug is an answer. And unfortunately, that's what it trained him to do. And he lost his life 2 years ago. Took some drugs that were laced with fentanyl, and he died in his sleep. And this tragedy happens to thousands of people a year. And it's the system that does it, because you are not supposed to conform to this system, to this manner of learning. We're not meant to learn this way. We're meant to learn the way that we're intended to learn. And everybody's different. Everybody has a different gift in life. Everybody has a purpose. And we're supposed to find that. We all have a gift. We're all here to share that gift. And in sharing that gift is the seed of all economic activity in the world. And with everybody having a unique gift, it creates this incredible tapestry of civilization, of people sharing their gift with the world and creating a vibrant economy and a vibrant community everywhere. And this model of schooling has turned us into mere consumers and mere cogs in a machine that churn out garbage that doesn't fulfill our soul. It just fulfills the pockets of the capitalists. That's what the school system is meant to do. It's meant to create cogs to go into the machine, to go into the system, so that the elitists and the wealthy class and the predatory parasites can grow richer and richer and richer and continue to control us. The model that I'm showing you in Chapter 8 is going to break humanity free of this cycle forever, because it all aligns with natural law. All right? Nothing like this has ever been proposed in human history for large-scale civilizations.
You learn that the right answer is the one in the textbook, not the one you discover for yourself, and this is no accident. This is design. Machiavelli wrote that if you wish to control a population, you must shape not just their actions, but their desires. And what better way to do that than to condition children to seek approval from authority figures from the age of 5? You're trained to crave the gold star, the A+, the teacher's smile. And over time, that craving becomes your compass. You stop asking, is this true? And start asking, will this get me a good grade? The system doesn't have to punish rebellion because it has already trained you not to rebel. Let's be honest, what does school reward? Memorization, repetition, quietness, timeliness, predictability. But what does life reward? Adaptability, creativity, emotional intelligence, courage. And yet, none of these things are meaningfully developed in traditional schooling. In fact, they're often punished. A student who questions the logic of a lesson is labeled disruptive. A student who daydreams is diagnosed. A student who refuses to accept the rules is sent to detention. What's being trained here is not intellect, it's docility. And then there's the curriculum itself. Think about it. You're taught history through the lens of the state. You're taught economics without ever discussing who benefits from inequality.
I look back at everything that we're taught, and in the last 19 years, I've unlearned everything that I learned my entire life. And I've come to the realization that everything we're taught, exactly what he's talking about here. We're not taught who benefits from inequality. We're just taught that capitalism is good and it's better than communism, and if you think otherwise, you're the problem. Don't question it, right? Not saying that communism is good, but that's the point. They teach you black and white. This is good, that's bad, you don't need to question anything. Is there a gray? Is there an in-between? Is there maybe both of these? Maybe this is a false dichotomy. They don't teach you that. They don't teach you to think like that. They don't teach you anything. They teach you what they want you to believe so that you become a cog in their machine, period. That's it.
You're taught literature with interpretations pre-packaged for you. There's no space for the radical, the mystical, the revolutionary. The curriculum sanitizes knowledge. It presents a world that is orderly, rational, and under control. But the real world is far messier, more unpredictable, and full of power dynamics that school never wants you to see. Why? Because true education threatens the status quo. Machiavelli knew that knowledge in the hands of the free is dangerous.
And that's what I'm telling you here. This is the first step to freeing ourselves from the status quo. We have to reclaim the mind. We have to educate ourselves. We have to learn how to think. Most people don't know how to think. Most people, I hate to say it, are just dumb nodes on Hive Mind networks regurgitating programmed information. That's it. That's why I laid that out in Chapter 1. This chapter is about how to reclaim the full capability of your mind. People who are free thinkers, who learn how to think, who learn to question everything, We can topple regimes. We can question dogmas. We can completely change the world once we get enough people understanding this. And the beautiful thing is, it doesn't take long to learn this. You know, I'm going to show you a simple equation that you can begin applying to everything that you believe immediately and see if it's true or false. And I'm also going to show you where I learned this curriculum and where to access it on my website so that you can go through the curriculum too and learn on your own how to reclaim the full power of your mind. Because that's what it's going to take to topple regimes, to question dogmas, to dissolve the system. Because, again, nobody should want to live in the system. Look at what the system is doing to not only America, but the rest of the world right now.
It can topple regimes, it can question dogmas, it can expose the machinery behind the illusion. But knowledge that is compartmentalized, sterilized, and tightly controlled, that kind of knowledge creates perfect servants. People who are competent enough to operate machinery, but not perceptive enough to question who built it. Let me ask you something. When you were in school, were you ever taught how to challenge authority?
No.
Without being punished? Were you taught how to navigate moral complexity? Were you challenged to construct your own philosophy of life?
Only in my philosophy courses in college did I learn anything close to that. And I got straight A's in my philosophy courses. It actually kept my GPA up in college because my two accounting classes really brought it down. I got D's in both of my accounting classes in college.
Or were you just fed a string of disconnected facts meant to be regurgitated and forgotten? And here's the real trick. Once you've been through this system long enough, you begin to internalize it. You don't need a teacher anymore to tell you what to do. You do it to yourself.
Look what happened during COVID. Everybody not only policed themselves, they started policing everybody else. They were just regurgitating what they heard on the TV. And I knew from day one it was all a hoax. Because I'm a free thinker, living in a world of conformists and repeaters and pretenders and plagiarists. And yeah, that wears you down after a while. And you're viewed as the enemy when you're actually the one trying to free their minds. You know? It's really scary, the world we live in right now. But I'm doing my part here.
You censor your own thoughts. You silence your own doubts. You start managing your life like a permanent student, always waiting for permission, always terrified of being wrong. That's the true success of the system.
Or going to experts and authorities in your television for answers, instead of actually seeking them yourself, which we're going to teach you how to do in part 2 here.
Not just that it controls behavior, but that it shapes identity. Machiavelli warned us that those in power will always seek to mold the minds of the people, but the most effective rulers are the ones who can make you believe that your chains are your choices. And school, under the guise of opportunity, teaches you to love those chains.
There you go. You're literally programmed to love the process. You know, when you're in high school, you got to get accepted to a good college. When you're in college, you got to get that perfect resume to land that perfect job. And look at where it's led us to now. People are coming out of college in massive debt they'll never be able to repay, with a job market that doesn't have a job for them anymore. That's what the system did to you. It's all been done by design. Because again, the whole design was to destroy the model. We can go all the way back to Maurice Strong. Isn't it our responsibility to bring about the end of the industrial age? That's what they're doing. And America was target number 1. That's why we're living in the United States as it is today. And why you see all these videos of people complaining. And why things never seem to change. It's because we're being dissolved on purpose, by design.
To measure your worth by test scores, to equate success with compliance, to view rebellion as immaturity rather than insight. So, what happens when a mind shaped by obedience is released into the world? It doesn't create, it consumes. It doesn't question systems, it becomes a gear in them. It doesn't seek truth, it waits to be told what truth is.
There you go. That's most people in the world today. What's the name of my channel? Kaizen and the Pursuit of Truth, right? Only knowing the truth is what will make us free. People just wait to be told what to do, what to believe. That's most of the world. And that's why things are the way they are right now. That's why everything that happened during COVID happened. People just trusted in the authorities and the experts without questioning anything. They didn't seek truth. And that's why my family ostracized me and won't talk to me anymore. They think they have the moral high ground. They think they know the truth, and they don't know anything close to the truth. When I try and tell them, they're not interested. They don't want to hear it. So, what can I do?
And that's not education, that's programming. If you want to reclaim your mind, the first step is to recognize the lie that school is not neutral, that learning is not obedience, that the curriculum was never designed to make you free, because once you see that clearly, you can begin to unlearn what was imposed on you and start learning what actually matters.
That's exactly what we're going to do in part 2 here, so stick around because part 2 is going to be extremely powerful.
Learning to be useful, how the system trains you to serve power, not purpose. When we talk about usefulness, it sounds like a virtue. We all want to be useful, right? We want to contribute, to matter, to be needed. But have you ever stopped to ask, useful to whom and for what purpose? Because usefulness, when defined by someone else, can become the most subtle form of slavery.
What I'm going to show you in Chapter 8 is a system where we are useful, where we create true value for our community, for society, and not a parasitical system that's using us for their own benefit. Because the system is a parasite. The system is the vampire. And I'm going to show you a new system in which our usefulness is for the good of other people, for your community, for your society, for your family.
That's exactly what the school system does. It molds you not to discover your own purpose, but to fulfill someone else's. You're not educated to become a thinker, an artist, a rebel, or a self-aware human being. You're trained to become a function, a cog, a compliant worker who keeps the machine running, never daring to question who built it or why. Machiavelli understood power better than anyone. He saw that the most effective rulers are not the ones who use brute force, but the ones who make people want to obey. And how do you achieve that? You teach them that their value lies in their utility. You tell them from a young age that their worth is measured by productivity, efficiency, and output. You condition them to believe that being successful means getting a job that pays well, pleases your parents, and fits neatly into existing system.
That's why my mother rejected me, because the only time she was ever accepting of me was when I was at my most miserable, when I was a cog in the machine. When I broke free of that in 98, she rejected me because she was a cog in the machine. She was one of the ones who, if I didn't conform to her perception of reality, I was wrong. But that's what narcissists do. And we live in a narcissistic system, right? The whole entire system is narcissistic. As you saw from those early quotes, it's run by narcissists, control freaks, by elitists who believe themselves to be equal to God, the creator, right? I didn't fit into the system, but she never accepted me for who I am. And unfortunately, she just passed away on April 22nd. And I never talked to her for the last 6 years of her life. She owed me an apology, and she never reached out to me. So I never got my apology, and I never got any closure. So I got to live with that now the rest of my life, knowing that my mother disapproved of me my entire life and never bothered to know me understand me or even want to. I either conformed to her perception of reality or I was wrong. I was defective. I was the problem when she was the problem all along, because she was the one that was programmed. She was the narcissist. She was the one with OCD, with an irrational fear of germs. But I'm the one who was the problem, and she was always the victim, according to her story that she told everybody, according to her perception of reality. I was the problem because I didn't fit into this system, because I broke free. I was the renegade, the rebel, the free thinker who always said, you know what, there's better ways to do things. And I did find better ways to do things. Now I'm trying to show the rest of the world, and some people see it, most people don't. Most people aren't even willing to watch my videos, so we'll see how this goes.
And once that belief is rooted deep enough, people will police themselves. They'll sacrifice their dreams, their time, their health, not because they were forced to, but because they were taught to believe it was noble. School, under the guise of preparing you for life, actually prepares you to serve, not in the sense of serving humanity or a higher purpose, but in the sense of serving institutions.
How many times have you heard people say, I'm a good law-abiding citizen? That's exactly what the system teaches you to be. Now we're going to talk about citizenship and laws. The laws in Chapter 4, citizenship in Chapter 8, and show you how that was a program that you don't want to be. Either of those things. Because that just shows you what an obedient, conformist, little cog in the machine you truly are. Right? That's not the goal in life, is to be a good law-abiding citizen. The goal in life is to be a free, autonomous human being, living your life to the fullest, on your terms, without doing harm to anybody else. That's the goal in life. And I'm going to show you the world that we can create so that everybody can live that life and not be cogs in a machine any longer.
Corporations, bureaucracies. You're taught to optimize your resume, not your soul. You're taught to chase credentials, not wisdom. And the ones who do this best, the so-called top students, are often the ones who've been most thoroughly shaped by the system. They know how to play the game, but they don't know how to question the rules.
That's all the yes men, all the ass kissers, all the brown noses out there who make it high up in their corporations, high up in the government. They're the best conformists out there. And they're the ones who now rule over us and control us and make the laws and control society. Right? It's not the free thinkers. It's the most conformist. It's the worst of the worst in society. And nobody should want to be living in that world. If you're a free spirit, a free thinker, a real organic human being, not a programmed automaton of the system, a true organic soul, the human being who cares about others, about our world, about doing the right thing, about doing good in this world. It's the ones who are programmed the best that are the ones who become the most successful in the system, because they know that they can be used. They know that they can be controlled, and they're paid well to do so, because they control the people down below them in the hierarchy. That's how the system works.
Let me be brutally honest. The world does not need more obedient workers. It needs visionaries, artists, healers, philosophers, people who can think independently, feel deeply, and act courageously. But those qualities are not profitable to the system.
They're not profitable to us either. I've given you a vision of a better world. My work would heal the world if fully implemented. I am a philosopher. I love knowledge. I seek it every day. I acquire more and more every day. And I also share it with the world so that we can change things. All right? I'm disruptive to the system. I'm not profiting from this. Nobody's paying me to do this. At the end of this video book, I'm willing to ask, now that you've seen it and we need to build it, I'm going to need your help financially. And I'm going to show you how we can, how you can help me out. But nobody's paying me to do this work. I'm living at poverty wages right now, below the poverty level. Just trying to do this work. Because acquiring wealth is not my goal. Changing the world is my goal. And we're only going to change the world by changing our minds. We're only going to change the world by acquiring the skills that I'm going to teach you in part 2 of chapter 3 here. We have to break free, stop being cogs in the machine, and the machine will grind to a halt.
Disruptive, and so, instead of nurturing them, school suppresses them. It teaches you to specialize early, to focus on what's practical, to avoid anything that doesn't have a clear economic outcome. You're steered away from the humanities, from introspection, from anything that might cause you to question the very system you're being prepared to enter. Let me ask you, when was the last time you were encouraged to define your own version of success? Not the version your culture, your parents, or your school prescribed, but your own messy, beautiful, terrifying version. Probably never, because if you started asking those questions, you might realize that the whole game is rigged. That what you've been preparing for all these years is not a life of meaning, but a life of utility.
And I broke free of that again in 1998. Once I left the corporate world, I never looked back. And I've created a life of meaning. I've created a life of sharing knowledge with the world that can change the world, that can restore power back to the individual, that can destroy these systems that have controlled us for 6 millennia. All right? That to me is a life of meaning. That to me is success. If I succeed in my goals of creating a world of natural law republics, that will be the ultimate success for me. Because I have dedicated 19 years of my life now to this cause, to free humanity from the system. Right? That's true meaning. It's not just utility. It's not just doing something just to do it. I'm not doing this for a paycheck. I'm not doing this. I'm doing this because it needs to be done, and I didn't see anybody else doing it. I saw everybody else just, as we'll talk about in chapter 7, focusing on the problems and not the solution. Okay?
And that's the cruel irony. You spend over a decade in school being told that it's for your benefit, that you're being prepared for the real world. But when you finally get there, you realize that you are being prepared to serve something you never chose. Not yourself, not your dreams, but a system that sees you as a resource, not a human being.
There you go. They look at us as human resources on the hierarchy to be managed by the media, education, government, religion, and the medical industrial complex and big pharma. That's how they control us. We're just human resources to them. We're not human beings and we're not souls to them. I see everybody as autonomous individual souls inhabiting a physical body here to learn, to ascend, to find your gift, to share it with the world. That's how I view everybody. Not as a resource, but as a human being. And that's where everybody needs to get to.
Machiavelli would have seen through this instantly. He knew that power thrives on predictability, that a society full of independent thinkers is a threat to the status quo. So the solution? Don't create independent thinkers, create efficient, anxious, obedient workers who mistake their servitude for success, who are too busy proving their worth to ever stop and ask what that worth is based on.
And look at where we are now. I mean, people can't find jobs. I mean, they're so stuck in the system because that's what they're taught. Like, if you don't have a job, you're worthless. That, you're not contributing. But it's just all part of the system. And the goal of my work is to create a critical mass large enough to transition into a new system where everybody will find something that contributes value to society, for which they can be paid a living wage, a good salary, whatever. Keep 100% of it and build a life of abundance for you and for your family. And restore all the wealth that we create back to we the people. Remove the mechanism that siphons the wealth from society, so that once we all keep it and once we all keep what we create, we build vibrant societies in a vibrant civilization that operates within the balance of nature as well, that respects nature. Okay? Because once we break the model of corporate greed and quarterly earnings, everything will change. But that's all I'll say for chapter 8. Okay?
And here's the tragedy. Many of us wake up to this far too late. After the degree, after the job, after the mortgage, after the soul has been slowly traded for status, comfort, and a false sense of security.
Everyone in my family has sold their soul for this. Every single one. And that's why I'm the outcast. Because I didn't sell my soul for that. I'm living my true purpose. And they don't like that. So they reject me and they won't talk to me. I'm the problem in their eyes.
We look at our lives and wonder, how did I end up here? But the better question is, who taught me to want this? Because if you want to reclaim your life, you first have to reclaim your definition of usefulness. You have to stop asking, how can I fit in? And start asking, what am I here to do? That question can't be answered in a classroom. It can't be graded. It can only be lived.
And that's what I talk about in that article. We all are given a gift. We all have to find our true purpose in life. But the system trains you to just be and do. And find a position where you fit into the machine. And that's not what life is about. School is supposed to teach us to find our purpose, to find our passion, our bliss, right, in life, and what we want to do. And it doesn't do that at all. It teaches us to be cogs in this machine. Right? The education model in a natural law republic would enable every single person to find their purpose. That's the way the entire education system would be set up in the new model. But we have to get there. And we need millions of people on board, aligned with this vision before we can get there. And that's why this work is so important. That's why this video book is so important, that you must share it with as many people as you can. Because this is how we're going to get there. Step by step. Seeing the system for what it is. Reclaiming the mind. Understanding how we've been enslaved through propaganda, through education, through the media, through the legal system, which is coming in the next chapter, through this illusion of democracy, which is chapter 6, right? That's all part of the cage. These are all program beliefs that need to be shattered, that I've shattered long ago, and why I'm teaching you. This is the only way humanity will ever be free. Okay? We have to first reclaim our mind and undo the damage of 12 to 16 years of schooling.
The escape plan, how to unlearn the system and reclaim your mind. So what now? You've seen the trap, you've felt the weight of it. Years of conditioning, of being shaped to serve, not to think, to obey, not to question, to produce, not to live. You understand that school wasn't designed to awaken you, it was designed to train you, and if you've made it this far, then you're already asking the question that terrifies every system of control. How do I break free? That's where it begins.
And the whole key to all of this, while it is an individual journey, we can't break free alone. Because when you break free, then you're in a system that rejects you. And you don't have a place in it for economic benefit, where you can actually earn a living. So we need to break free en masse. You have to do the work individually, but if we want to bring the system down, we have to do it together in a number so large that we can't be ignored. You see? So that's the key. The key is our numbers. And we're talking about that in chapter 8. But yes, everybody has an individual journey and an individual responsibility to reclaim the mind. You can break free of the system, right? You can be in the matrix, but not of the matrix. But until the matrix is dissolved, we can never be truly free to express our full potential in life, because the matrix won't allow you to do that, right? You're going to be outcast. You're not going to be allowed in the economic model unless you're a complete conformist. And that's where they're taking us to. That's why they're building up the digital prison grid. Because for all the free thinkers out there who aren't going to submit to the digital prison, that is the mark of the beast. You will not be able to buy and sell in the marketplace unless you conform. That's why they're building these data centers all over the country. That's what it's for. It's to control us, nothing more. So, in the system that I'm proposing in chapter 8, no more data centers. Most of them will be shut down. And the ones we need to manage society will be left in place to help us run the numbers or do things, compute, whatever. Make life simpler for us to manage society, but all control will be with the people. And you'll see how that works in chapter 8.
Rebellion for rebellion's sake, but in radical self-awareness, in unlearning what never belonged to you and relearning how to be human on your own terms. The first step is silence. Not passive silence, but the kind that listens. You have to get quiet enough to hear your own mind again. Not the voice of your teachers or parents or guidance counselors, but your voice. Because underneath all the programming, it's still there. Faint, maybe. Scared, definitely. But real. And it's asking questions you've been trained to ignore. What do I love? What do I fear? What do I believe in when no one is watching? These are not academic questions, they are existential ones. And no curriculum will give you the answers. You have to live them. You also have to get very comfortable with being uncomfortable. That's one of the first symptoms of true learning. Remember, real education is not safe.
And most people, if you try and challenge their beliefs, that's the first thing, is discomfort. It's the ego protecting the sense of self, the sense of reality. Oh no, I can't admit that I'm wrong. Therefore, it's too uncomfortable for me to continue this conversation with you. So I'm going to cast you out, and that's what my family's done to me. They don't want to listen to me. They don't want to hear what I have to say. My sister sent me a text the other day. I sent her a text that I was kind of shocked that nobody told me anything about my mother, her declining health, and her rapid death. They say, oh, we told Dad. But they don't want to talk to me because they don't have any interest in what I have to say, is what she said. You talk about things of no interest to me. Okay. But again, she is one who has sold her soul. She works for the media. She works in the belly of the beast. She is a producer for one of the most evil corporations in the world, Comcast NBC. She produces the news. So she is essentially a professional liar. That's her job. And for her to admit that she's wrong about anything, when she's actually part of the machine, part of the propaganda machine, is far too much for her to bear. So she will never listen to. That's who she is. And it's sad because I love my little sister and I always wanted to help her, but I just can't have any respect for someone who doesn't care that she's a professional liar. and has no interest in any of the things that I'm teaching here. The things that will actually change the world. Because she's got her bag, you know. She makes good money. I didn't want to go there. Anyway, let's continue.
It destabilizes. It forces you to confront the parts of yourself that school told you to hide. Your anger, your doubt, your wildness, your dreams that don't fit into job descriptions. You're going to have to unlearn the idea that being wrong is shameful. True thinkers aren't afraid of being wrong. They're afraid of being fake. And most of what we call success is built on a foundation of fakeness.
Exactly. I mean, just the plastic world. I've had to admit I was wrong about pretty much everything I've ever learned growing up over the last 19 years, and I'm okay with that. That's the shedding of the ego. It's when you refuse to admit you're wrong about anything, that's your ego fully control of your consciousness. The day you begin to consider that you're wrong about things that you believe is the day that you start shedding the ego and you start taking back control of your consciousness and not allowing your ego to control your consciousness any longer, and actually look at the evidence that will refute your long-held beliefs, because that's what it's going to take. We're going to talk about that in part 2 of this chapter.
So if you want to escape, you must be willing to look foolish, to fail publicly, to walk paths that have no syllabus. Next, read, but not to impress anyone. Read like your life depends on it. Read philosophy, poetry, science, spiritual texts. Read the people who were exiled, the people who were silenced, the people who were too dangerous to be taught in schools. Read Machiavelli, yes, but also read James Baldwin, Audre Lorde, Dostoevsky, Simone Weil, Krishnamurti. Read the thinkers who ask not just how to live, but why. Then, more importantly,
and that's what I've done for the last 19 years. I've actually read and listened to and studied so much alternative thought throughout the ages to come to an understanding that I have today. And it takes time. It takes effort to do that. But what I'm doing with all my work is I'm sharing this distilled knowledge, the most important parts of what I've learned in this video book, so that by the time you get through it, and it's probably going to be about 20 hours long, which is equivalent of a 700-800 page book by the time it's done, you will have 19 years of knowledge that's been distilled for you in this easy to understand, step-by-step history of America, of the world, and the only really viable solution, once you understand the nature of the system, how it works, and what the only real solution is. Because there is only one real solution, right? There is only one objective truth about everything in existence. And you're going to learn that as we continue through the book.
write your own thoughts, not for an audience, not for a grade, just for yourself.
And as I did this process over the last 19 years, I mentioned many times, I've got over 1,000 pages of handwritten notes that I sat there with a pencil after I listened to something, after I read something, after I learned something. I would sit there and write out my thoughts. Sometimes for 10 minutes, sometimes for 2 hours. And the thoughts just flowed. And that's how it all got reinforced into my mind. The solutions, the problem, all the pieces of the puzzle that I'm sharing with you here. This is the process I went through that he's talking about right here in this video. That's what I've been doing for the last 19 years. I've been compiling this information and putting it in a way to where I understood it, to a point where I could communicate it and share it with others, so that you could understand it without having to go through all of the thousands of hours that I've taken to distill this information and knowledge for you.
Carve your mind onto paper and see what it reveals.
That's exactly what I did. And I carved my mind onto paper. And what it reveals is what I'm sharing with you in this book here. The whole truth about how the American dream became a nightmare. And the only way we the people will restore its full promise once again, right? That all came from the last 19 years of my life. I saw what it revealed. It revealed the truth. It revealed the nature of the cage. It revealed the system for what it is. And it also revealed, well, this is obviously the only self-evident solution. That's why I'm sharing it with you. Because most people out there are just stuck in the system, have no idea how to even begin to get out, how to even begin to fix it. It's going to take someone who's actually done the work to show you. And that's what this video book is all about.
Others, too. Escape is hard alone. Find people who are also waking up.
That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to reach out to people who I know care. I'm going to share this book once it's finished and say, look, we need to create a coalition of people who understand and share this with your massive audience. And we need to get to 200 million people as quick as possible before it all collapses, so that we can walk away. We can get out of the way of the oncoming train, step out of the way, and just move into a whole new reality. That's what I'm going to show you in chapter 8. But yeah, I'm looking for people, right, who are also waking up, who are willing to share this information and get this message out there. Because this is what it's going to take. We have to reclaim the mind. That's number one. After understanding the nature of the cage. Okay? Once you understand the nature of the cage, reclaiming the mind, that's the first step to escaping it.
Talk with them, not about gossip or trends, but about truth. Ask them what they believe. Share what scares you. Build a tribe, not of followers, but of fellow seekers. This is how you begin to rebuild.
Yeah, and I'm not looking for a following. I'm looking for, this is a leaderless revolution, restoration. This is this is a curriculum that's going to teach everybody how to be their own ruler. Okay? How to take back complete control of your life. And once we get enough people to do that, we're going to implement a system that allows you to be your own ruler. Not to be ruled, to be your own ruler. And a system that enables you to find your full potential in life, fulfill it, and share it with the world. And earn the value, the full value that it gives to other people. Right? Because in that system, everybody would live in abundance. So, again, we're not looking for followers. We're looking for people who want to take control of their own life, right? And once we get enough people who want to do that, we will create the system that enables us to maintain that. Okay? This is not a cult. It's not a following. It's not a new, it is a new social order, because that's what the American dream is, a social order which allows you to achieve your full potential in life, right? It's a system, but it's a system of individuals who are fully autonomous, who are not dependent on the system. The system will ensure that you remain independent and autonomous. Not dependent on the system, but a system that protects the autonomy of the individual. And you'll see that in chapter 8, how that works.
What school tried to strip away: community, curiosity, courage. And finally, create. Not because someone gives you permission, not because it will go viral, not because it has market value, but because it's the most human thing you can do.
There you go. That's what I'm doing. I know the market value of this is priceless, because it would change the world if people understood this. Right? I'm not doing this. I'm doing this because this is the most human thing I can do. I see the problems of the world. I've studied them for 19 years. I've seen the self-evident solution. And so this is the most human thing I can do. Just sit down here in front of my computer, create this video book, and share with the world, this is how you were enslaved. This is how your mind was taken over. This is how your mind is controlled. And this is how we free ourselves. All right? The most human thing that I can do And this is what I'm doing. This is my purpose in this life, and I'm fulfilling it.
Paint, build, film, sing, write poetry, start a project that scares you. Creation is rebellion. Creation is healing.
Here you go. This is creation. I'm creating these videos so that we can change the world. You know, creation is restoration.
Creation is education. When you create, you take back your agency. You remind yourself that you are not a cog, you are a force.
That's what I'm going to show you in Chapter 8, how we reclaim our agency. How we start outsourcing our agency to experts and authorities and reclaim our own agency to control our own life. And once you have the knowledge that I'm going to teach you in Part 2 here, you'll be able to learn anything. You'll be able to discern truth from fiction just by looking at it. You become so good at seeing through the bullshit. You're not even going to believe the things that you used to believe and the things that people still attack me about to this day, because they're just regurgitating hive mind bullshit, right? It's the world we live in. I'm showing everybody how to break free of that, and most people are still resisting, but I'm still doing it. I'm a force. This is my gift to the world, as I said right there at the beginning of the introduction. This is my gift to the world.
Machiavelli warned us not just about rulers, but about the ways we voluntarily surrender our freedom. He understood that power doesn't need chains when it has habits, and school, for all its promises, often becomes the most dangerous habit of all, the habit of disowning yourself.
There you go. What did Bernays refer to at the first page of Propaganda? The conscious and intelligent manipulation of the habits and opinions of the masses is an important part of democratic society. Those who control the strings of this mechanism form an invisible government, which is the true ruling power of our country and our world. Okay? It's all right here. I'm showing you everything, I'm showing you how it works, and by the time you get done with Chapter 8, you'll understand fully how we undo it, open the prison gates, and all run free and create an entirely new world of abundance. And just, I can't even imagine the world that we would create once we're free of this. Okay? I can't wait till we get there.
So the final escape plan is this. Reclaim your inner sovereignty.
That's exactly what I'm going to show you how to do in Chapter 8. That's why once I saw this video, I said, I have to share this. This has to be part of Chapter 3. Because so much of what he talks about in this video is what I talk about in this book. Reclaiming your inner sovereignty is exactly what I'm going to show you in Chapter 8.
In your own again.
Making your mind your own again is what I'm going to teach you in Part 2 of Chapter 3 here. Okay? That's why this video is so powerful.
Make your life your own again.
That's what I'm going to do. That's what we're going to do. We're going to make our lives our own again. Everybody's going to have their own life. They are going to own their life. They're going to own their property. They're going to own their home. They're going to own their life. Their life is not going to be taxed. Your income is not going to be taxed. Your property is not going to be taxed. Your home, there is no property tax in the natural law republic. There is no income tax. All right, I'm going to show you how we pay for this system. But it's a tiny fraction of what we're all paying right now, what we're all being robbed of right now.
To be taught and start learning like your soul is on the line.
Your soul is on the line, trust me. Most of you have sold out your soul to the system. And you're going to have to go around again. And next time it's going to be a lot harder. Because if we don't do this now, if we don't win, if we don't rise, the world you're going to come back to is going to be much worse. It's going to be that much harder for your soul to rise. Because that's what this is all about. The system wants your soul. Your soul is what feeds it. And you keep selling your soul to the system. That's what makes it more and more powerful. And I'm showing everybody how we free our souls and how we create a world that our Creator, the God, whatever it is, intended for us. Because this is what logic and reason tell us. Right? Not this false system that we live in that is lied to us our entire lives, saying this is what you need to be. Because all that does is feed the system. You've sold your soul to the system. I'm going to show you how to start learning like your soul is on the line. That's what part 2 of this chapter is all about. Because it is. I'm free. I know my soul is ascending after I'm done here. I've done the work to free myself from this matrix. And I'm trying to free as many souls as I can with my work.
Because it is. And one last question to leave you with. If you had never gone to school, who would you be today? That person is still in there. Set them free.
There you go. Set that person free. And that's what this book is all about. About everybody setting themselves free of the system. And transitioning into a new system in which we all can be free. Which we all can fulfill our full potential in life. And be what we're meant to be. Okay? That's what this is all about. So, that's it. That's it for part 1 of chapter 3. Now, follow me to part 2 of chapter 3, the re-education process that everyone programmed by the system must take to restore the full capability of their mind and comprehend objective truth and reality as it is. I really hope you enjoyed this part of chapter 3. It actually turned out a lot more powerful than I realized it would be once I got into the video. I just knew when I watched that video it had to be part of the chapter, but my God, it just highlighted so much of what this video book is about and where we're going and what we're doing and why it needs to be done. So, again, thank you for your time. I love you all, and we will see you over at part 2 of chapter 3. Bye-bye.